Welcome to the EdjSports NFL Podcast for Week 1, coming at you on a Tuesday. We normally would be coming here on a Monday. We had some technical difficulties yesterday, so we're a day late, but you can normally expect us on Monday. I'm your host, Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst at EdjSports, and with me, as he is every week, is my co-host, Scott Brown, our VP of Data Science here at EdjSports. Scott, how was your weekend? How'd you enjoy the first week of NFL action?
I enjoyed it a lot, Ian. Thanks. I was highly entertained by the slate of games, especially the primetime games. We're going to get into it here in just a moment. But I thought it was a great showing for the NFL. A lot of entertainment value to be had there. What about you? What did you like about Week 1?
Just having football back, having the fans in the stands, I think, honestly, was the biggest thing that stood out to me, just the environment and how loud you can even hear it get on TV in some of these stadiums, especially Arrowhead. That place got pretty loud. Even last night in Las Vegas was cool. And you and I talked off air talking about how Red Zone. It's nice to have Red Zone and our friend Scott Hansen back. Seems like he's always there. You can always catch him on Sunday. So
and no more fake noise had to be piped into the TV speakers this year. So that's always a good thing to return back to a natural football environment.
Absolutely. So before we dive right into recapping the biggest plays from Week 1 and some of the most impactful plays, just wanted to remind everyone that we will have our show available for you Monday, like I said in the beginning, throughout the NFL season. Also, be sure to check out our all-new site and experience at EdjSports.com. That's EdjSports.com. And download our new app, which is available for both iOS and Android. On there, you can get pre-game betting insights for every NFL game this season, as well as our fair value for each game, and the ability to track your bets to see the probability of them hitting. That's kind of the kicker. I had a lot of fun with that this weekend. I made some bets of my own, and being able to see the probability of those hitting in real time, especially if you've got some parlays going or anything where you are being offered a cash out. That's really cool to see. We spent a lot of time in the offseason really making this kind of a best-in-class experience in the sports betting market. So be sure to download. Again, that's edjsports.com and on the App Store for iOS and Android. So now let's get into Week 1. So we started the week with an extremely exciting game, an opening night kickoff between Dallas and Tampa. There was a wild overtime finish in Monday Night Football last night with Baltimore and Las Vegas. That one went back and forth the last couple minutes of fourth down and even in overtime. And then we had Minnesota and Cincinnati, kind of a surprise game there for some people that went to overtime with the Bengals winning that game. So last night, said the Raiders came back to win in overtime. John Gruden, surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, last year he made some good decisions. He had a few good decisions last night as well. A couple years ago, we kind of hammered him a lot for his conservative nature on fourth downs. This week, the best fourth down go, number 4, and he overcame the fifth worst execution play that we tracked when Derek Carr had that crazy interception that went off his receiver's helmet, intercepted in the end zone, and then the second most impactful play that benefited them when they had the strip sack of Lamar Jackson to get the ball back, and they would end up scoring to win that game. Anything else stick out to you from this game, Scott?
You covered most of it, Ian. I mean, this game had everything. Like the entertainment value was absolutely through the roof. In prime time on Monday night, you couldn't have scripted it any better. As you mentioned, both of these teams faced kind of early tests on fourth down early in the game. They both passed. They were 4th and 1 decisions. This is something that we kind of have come to expect from Harbaugh. He's definitely gained a reputation, I think rightfully so, for being one of the sharpest head coaches in the league. He definitely has been pushing the envelope forward there by being aggressive, going forward in those close spots, in those spots that we think it's really worth it to do so. And
he was our Coach of the Year a couple years ago as well.
That's exactly right. And John Gruden, he's a bit of a different story, right? I think he definitely succeeded here, but he, I think, has somewhat of a reputation for being passive at times. In this particular spot, he went for it early on 4th and 1. It didn't work out, but it was good to see him make the right decision there. So it'll be definitely interesting to see, as the season progresses, how does he approach these spots? Does he continue to be aggressive? Does he continue to pull the trigger there? With Harbaugh, we kind of have come to expect him, to be pulling the trigger there. But with Gruden, it will just have to wait and see. But it's good to see Vegas get off on the right foot there, get the win in this highly entertaining game. The back and forth, as you mentioned. I mean, that overtime was just nuts. What was your reaction to that?
I mean, honestly, I thought the game was over when Lamar took him down for the field goal. I think it was Justin Tucker hit. I think it was a 52-yarder to give him the lead with about 30 seconds left. And then Vegas had no timeouts. Carr has the 2 quick passes that get about
like 40
15 yards each.
Yeah, they had like 40 seconds left or so, and were able to tie it up. Yep. That was crazy.
Carlson coming in clutch with that 55-yard field goal was pretty awesome. So then it went to overtime. The Raiders just marched right down the field, had what we thought was a touchdown initially.
Thought the game winner, yeah.
Thought it was over. Ended up being at the 1. Took them a couple plays. The sneak, they couldn't get it. Ended up having that interception, like we said, the freak play on 3rd down, but were able to get the ball back. Defense stepped up and made some plays, and they were able to win it. What we thought was going to be a field goal looked like they were just they had the delay of game, I believe. It looked like they were just trying to get a few yards back for a field goal, and ended up having Zay Jones wide open. I forgot Zay Jones was even on the team, to be honest.
Yeah, sometimes when the defense sends everybody they can at you, you just have to throw it over the top for a little fadeaway, little Derek Carr fadeaway over the top to get the touchdown to win it, not even have to risk the field goal. So yeah, that was definitely quite a game. Great to see on Monday night. Highly entertaining, and I loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah, great way to begin and end week 1, like I said, with those two exciting games. And then on to the other overtime game, Minnesota and Cincinnati. So the Bengals were the home underdog, got the win versus the Vikings. Joe Burrow came back after his ACL tear that ended his season last year, leading them to victory. Joe Mixon had a big game. For those of you like me that have him in fantasy, that looks like they're using him as a workhorse, but Bengals defense came up with the biggest play of the weekend in terms of win probability as they forced the Dalvin Cook fumble in overtime. The fumble cost the Vikings 59.2% win probability. Was our most impactful play of the week and obviously of the season so far. And there were some interesting play calls in this one too. Zach Taylor's here to win is what he showed us this weekend. In the 4th quarter, he elected to punt on 4th and 3 on the Minnesota 47, up by 3 with 1:55 left. So this was his lone error. He had a few, but this was one of the bigger ones. Cost him 4.4%, but he made up for it. He had the 2nd best 4th down go of the day in overtime, which led to the 32-yard gain that set them up for the game-winning field goal. It was an 11.2% increase in win probability on that 4th and 1, right near midfield, 40 seconds left. Could have chosen to punt and just play for the tie, which we saw. I believe it was Philly last year, did the exact opposite, where they punted when they had a chance for a field goal. Obviously, Cincinnati couldn't have kicked a field goal here, but playing to win, and that's what we like to see. And he finished as, I believe, our worst coach of the year 2 years ago, his rookie year as a head coach. Really struggled, but he didn't have a great team, but still we account for that. But it looks like he's come a long way, and like I said, he's here to win. So did you see this one? I'm sure Red Zone, I know, covered this one a lot as well because we both spent a lot of time there. And what were your thoughts on this game decision-making there from those coaches?
Yeah, I mean, I think Zach Taylor, good job there in making that the first 4th down go decision. I think it's a mixed bag, though, right? He had the 2nd biggest error of the week as well, so we don't want to give him too much of a free pass on that one. Sort of the counter to that, or on the flip side, is that it's not an obvious spot for a lot of coaches to be going forward in this situation. So I'll sort of tee it up. They were winning by 3 at the time. There was 1 minute and 55 seconds left. Right at midfield, they had a 4th and 3, right? And they chose to punt, which I think is sort of the conventional safe decision in that spot. Obviously, the alternative would be going for it, right? Essentially, if you go for it and make it there, you ice the game. It's over. And a similar situation came up. Not exactly similar, but a similar one came up on the Monday night game where McCarthy had a 4th and I believe it was 4th and 6 there at the end of the game where he could have iced the game before kicking the field goal to take the lead. It kind of came back to bite them. So these sorts of situations, I think a lot of coaches in the league are going to err more on the sure thing, on the safer side of things, right? Like make them go the length of the field to tie it up. The problem is that NFL offenses are just too good. They're too good. I mean, I think when you're the Cowboys on Monday night, you're giving the ball back to Tom Brady. Not a good situation with plenty of time to work. In this Bengals-Vikings game, Kirk Cousins and the Vikings offense, they're good. They have good passing offense. They have Dalvin Cook. So I think the Bengals were fortunate to pull this one out. When I was watching the game in overtime, to be honest with you, I was surprised the game didn't end in a tie. The tie almost felt inevitable to me. But I think they were fortunate, I think, to execute big when it mattered most. 2 minutes left left in overtime, they were able to force that fumble on Dalvin Cook right kind of near that mid area of the field, and that really swung the game. That was everything. Otherwise, I really feel like tie was close to inevitable there.
Yeah, and you said the sure thing. You all can't see it, but I'm doing some air quotes there because we see this a lot where you say take the points. It's just a field goal. It's a 30-yard field goal. That's not a guarantee. That's not a given in the NFL. No matter how good your kicker is, there's no guarantee you're going to make that. It's a high probability in some cases, but you can't just assume that you kick a field goal and you're going to make it.
Yeah, and maybe it's a good transition too because, Greg Zuerlein, right, on that opening night game, right? Greg Zuerlein, veteran kicker in the NFL, has had a great career. I mean, that guy's been money for so long, right? And everybody goes through their struggles. And we saw that on the Thursday night game where he missed an extra point, he was missing short field goal. It's just a good reminder that, when you say take the points, it's really, not always a sure thing.
Yeah. And one thing before we move on to our top fives getting in the impactful plays, one last note on Zach Taylor. It's something he got hammered for because we don't really like to talk momentum a lot here because you can't really quantify that. But earlier in the game, they had a 4th and 1 at their own 30, leading by, I believe they were up 10, 24-14. And he went for it. And we actually thought it was the good decision to go for it. It increased their pre-snap win probability by about 1.8. It would have been a little bit more, I think, had they not been, up 10 late. They were a little bit higher up in win probability. They didn't get it. Kind of, you get Minnesota gets the ball on Cincinnati 30, and they go to score and cut it to 3. But it took a 4th down conversion for Minnesota to score. They had 4th and 4, I think, and they scored a touchdown. So, he went for it. It was the right decision. Didn't work out. He got hammered for it. But, they still went on. It gave them the best chance to win the game, which is what we talk about a lot, is the process, not the result.
Yeah, I can't play the results too hard, and I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, so now that we've got the biggest storylines out of the way, Scott, let's talk about our top 5 most impactful plays from the weekend's action. So these are the plays, as you know, they have the most impact on the game in terms of win probability or game-winning chance, GWC, you all may hear us say, which is our term that we use for win probability. And these are either positive or negative, so we're looking at the absolute value of these plays. So starting with number 5, we had the Raiders and the Ravens tied in overtime with 6:19. It's that interception we talked about, the kind of freak play where Carr threw it. I think it was maybe Hunter Renfrow. Went off his helmet when it looked like 1,000 feet in the air, intercepted in the end zone. This one was a 34.7% drop in win probability for the Raiders. We said they ended up getting the ball back, but that was a huge play where it kind of looked like the Ravens were going to win that game, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was an absolute heartbreaker, right? First off, you hit the big pass play, which looked like, was going to be the end of the game, right? It was going to be the game winner. And then just short, basically on the half-yard line, couldn't get it in with the quarterback sneak, get sent back 5 yards due to a false start. And then, to have that happen was just a disaster. It almost looked inevitable, and then basically just completely ripped away from them. And then you have Lamar Jackson and that high-powered Ravens offense going down the field. All they need is a field goal to beat you, right? And so it was not looking good. You can understand why that was a big impactful play in that game last night.
And then coming in at number 4 is a game we actually haven't talked about yet. We haven't mentioned it, but it was another great game this weekend. It's Baker Mayfield coming down with 1 minute, 10 seconds left. The Chiefs had just taken the lead. Browns were down 33-29. Cleveland had 1st and 10 just around midfield, just like they would have had in that game last year in the playoffs had they been able to stop the Chiefs on 4th down. A lot of people were wanting to see what Baker could have done back then. We got the chance today. Unfortunately, his pass was intercepted. Unfortunately for the Browns, that is, was intercepted, costing the Browns all of their win probability. 36.1% down to 0.1%. There's always that very tiny bit, something crazy could happen. But that ended it and ended a great game.
Yeah, and the Browns were in a spot there. They needed a touchdown, so that sort of effect kind of drops us down the list. But you'll notice a theme here today, and probably most weeks on impactful plays, which is turnovers, right? Turnovers late in close games, especially when that team is in a good position to give them, a great shot at taking the lead or outright winning the game. And yeah, this one was just an absolute, clincher when you're driving down the field to win the game and just throw a pick. It ends it, right? Put the game on ice.
Like you said, not only turnovers, but you mentioned in that late in the game, these impactful plays, these might not be the best plays from the weekend, but because they happen so late, they're going to have the biggest impact. So you're going to see a lot of these be fourth quarter, maybe late third quarter, and overtime. Like we have going into our top three now is they're all from overtime. We've talked about these plays. We'll cover them kind of quickly here. The Bengals and Vikings tied with 40 seconds left was that 4th and 1 play, which we'll get to in our top 5 best decisions as well. But this is looking at the impact of the actual play and what happened after the snap. 4th and 1, right near midfield, 40 seconds left, and Burrow just kind of has a quick pass right over the line. I think the Vikings sent a lot of guys, had a guy open, C.J. Uzomah, and he had a lot of grass in front of him, ended up making it 32 yards down to the 20. That increased the Bengals' win probability by 37.8%, taking them up to almost 96%. Then we had the Ravens and Raiders, again tied at 27 in overtime. That is the Lamar Jackson sack fumble, recovered by the Raiders. Good for an increase or decrease, depending on which way you look at it, which team of 46.2%. So that was a 46.2% loss for the Ravens. And then number 1 we mentioned was Dalvin Cook. That fumble that was actually, we didn't say this before, was actually very close and could have really gone either way, I think. Even I think it was Mike Pereira on that one on Fox saying it could have gone either way, but it went in the Bengals' favor, increasing their win probability by 59.2%. Because Minnesota is the offensive team, that's how we look at these. You'll see them as negative because it is the offensive team that lost the ball, that lost the win probability, dropping the Vikings down to 27.9%. So that will wrap up our most impactful plays of the week. If you're interested in seeing more with those plays, be sure to check out our top 5 section on EdjSports.com and follow us on social media at EdjSports to see more breakdowns. We do post these live during the games as well. We've got our Twitter account that will, throughout every game, we'll post 4th down decisions, the best and the worst, as they come up in the games, any impactful plays. We do have this stuff out there live for you all to see as the games happen, and you can come back and see the final form of these lists on Monday with us. So now we're going to change gears a little bit, Scott, and talk about our top 5 best decisions from the weekend's action. So these are the decisions coaches made that had the most positive impact on the game in terms of win probability prior to the snap. So these are going to be 4th down decisions, sometimes extra points, kickoffs, onside kicks, but they're what we call critical calls, which encompass all of those. And it'll look at 2 decisions prior to the snap and what the difference is between those 2. So starting with number 5, we have the Bills and the Steelers. So this one is actually interesting. I'll get your take on this. Bills were up 10-6. So it was early in the 4th quarter, 4th and 1 at the Pittsburgh 41, and went for it. The decision to go for it alone increased their pre-snap win probability by 5.5%. What did you think of this play? I don't know if you remember exactly what happened on this. You may have an opinion, but I know a lot of the Bills fans we had on Twitter actually asked if we even saw the play of how it went. But like we said, this is before the snap, not considering anything that happened on the play.
Yeah, so on this play, it wound up not really working out for the Bills, right? Matt Breida lost 7 yards. Really wasn't what the outcome that they were looking for, right? But I think it was the right call, especially the point on the field that they found themselves. The Pittsburgh 41. A field goal really doesn't look good at that point on the field, right? You're looking at an absolute bomb of a field goal. Not a lot of success there. Likewise, punting's not great. When you punt, you're only going to swing field position, maybe 20, 25 yards. On average, which is just not worth that much, especially when offenses in the NFL tend to be so good. And so, yeah, you have Josh Allen, you have that dynamic offense, those great receivers, Stephon Diggs, chief among them. I think going forward here is the right call. And as you mentioned, gave them a 5.5% better chance at winning the game. It didn't work out in this particular instance, but, we don't play results too hard here. I really think it was the right call.
Yeah. And sometimes you'll hear even coaches, mentioned Zach Taylor earlier, the 4th and 1 on his own 30, he went for later. He said it was the right decision to go for it. I don't regret that, but it was the play call. And on this one, I think this is the one where they pitched it to Breida about 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and the Steelers were on him right away. So that was a great decision to go for it. Commend you, Sean McDermott. But whatever the play call was on that, tried to get a little too cute, made it a little bit more difficult than what it should have been with only 1 yard needed for that first down. So coming up to number 4, we've got the Raiders. We mentioned John Gruden against the Ravens. It was 4th and 1 at the 13. Down 17-10. So a lot of people might actually disagree with this one. We actually did have people disagree with this. They went for it instead of kicking a field goal, which prior to the snap gave them nearly 6% at 5.9% better chance to win the game. The question on this one kind of was, first off, they gave it to Josh Jacobs, who a few plays before it looked like came out of the game with a little bit of an injury. It looked like he was had something going on there. But, people say you're down there, you need 7 points, go ahead and get a field goal so a touchdown can win you the game next time. But that is assuming the other team doesn't score, and it's still 3 minutes left in the third quarter. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I totally agree. You kick the field goal, you go to 13-17, you still need a touchdown. The difference being that would put you ahead in theory instead of tying the game. But yeah, you're giving the ball back to the other team. You're giving the ball back to Lamar Jackson, and he can absolutely make things happen, put more points on the board, and then you're back to where you started. So yeah, they handed the ball off up the middle to Josh Jacobs. Didn't work out. If you're playing results, it was a bad decision. But where we sit over here, it was the right call. It absolutely was the right call. It didn't pan out for them there in that particular instance. But yeah, absolutely the right decision. We think it gave them close to 6% better chance winning the game. And yeah, we're I think happy with how John Gruden handled that particular choice.
And going into number 3, this one is a little bit surprising, not because of what happened, who it is, how they went for it, what the distance was. This was early in the second quarter, and it is our third best decision of the week, coming in tied for third at 5.9%. It's Kevin Stefanski, who, from watching the weekend's games and watching what he did last year, could be the front runner for our EdjSports Coach of the Year this year. The Browns started off their opening drive. They scored a touchdown. There was a penalty on the extra point. They went for 2, and they got it. Held the Chiefs to a field goal, so they're leading 8-3, 13.5 minutes left, have 4th and 1 at the Kansas City 5. Conventional wisdom, maybe not conventional wisdom, but a lot of people might say kick the field goal, give yourself an 8-point lead against the Chiefs, but it's the Chiefs, it's Patrick Mahomes. You got to go for it. You got to take advantage of every opportunity you can here.
Yeah, to that I say no. You're playing the Chiefs, right? You're playing the Chiefs. You're no slouch either. Cleveland Browns are a good team now, but Kansas City is too dominant on offense. Every time you give them the ball back and you don't fully capitalize on your own possessions, it's just not going to turn out very well for you. Early in this game, you gotta keep the pedal to the metal. You got to go for it. They had sort of an interesting setup as well. So they're on the 5-yard line. They're knocking on the door to score a touchdown. They only need one more yard to pick up a new set of a new set of downs, right? Which is hugely valuable. So there are a lot of ways to succeed by going for it on this play, right? In the case of what really happened, they scored a touchdown, which is ideal. But even short of that, they can just pick up the first down. They find themselves first and goal, between the 5 and the goal line. Like, hugely valuable possession to have there, and likely to lead in touchdown. So, yeah, I think absolutely the right call here to go for it, and it turned playing results worked out well for Jarvis Landry and the Cleveland Browns.
Yep, and a good point to make here is something that over the last few years we've seen when we're talking about these 4th and 1s and teams going for it. This doesn't really apply to the Browns, but we'll have fans or people respond and say, well, the offensive line wasn't blocking. They haven't been able to run the ball game. You don't have to run the ball on 4th and 1. You don't have to. And with Nick Chubb and that number 1 offensive line in Cleveland, they chose to pass. Maybe they did it to throw the Chiefs off a little bit, thinking they're going to run it. But you have, like you said, multiple ways to get that 1 yard. It doesn't have to be a run every time. And this is a perfect example of putting the ball in Baker's hands, who looked great, by the way, and letting him do what he does, and they were able to score the touchdown. So now, coming up to number 2, we've got the Washington football team against the Los Angeles Chargers, another good game that came down to the wire. The Washington had 4th and 1 at the Chargers 36, leading by 3. So another situation where they could have kicked a field goal to make it more than a field goal game. They chose to go for it. This was a 6.3% increase in pre-snap win probability. So getting up there. And this one, again, with 2.5 minutes left in the third quarter, so still quite a bit of time. So that's that's a good number, a high number to see, especially for that much time left in the game. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this kind of falls right in the wheelhouse of a good decision. So, you send the field goal unit out, you're kicking a 54-yarder, which is, these kickers are really good, but that's not a sure thing. You're starting to get into territory where every additional yard onto that field goal makes it much more tough, much tougher, I should say, to convert it. And 4th and 1 is your best possible scenario for a 4th down, right? You only have to pick up that single yard. I think as well, sort of like a circumstance in this play call that is not necessarily factored into the way we evaluate it, but also is working as wind at your back, is Ryan Fitzpatrick is out, right? So you have your backup quarterback Taylor Heineke in there trying to lead the team to victory. You're only up 3 at this point, and you find yourselves to be kind of a slight underdog going into this game, and certainly a bigger underdog now that your starting quarterback is out. I think you got to be comfortable taking greater chances, right? Being more aggressive, kind of taking it to the other team. A touchdown would be huge here, right? It makes it a 2-score game. So, I think that's a pretty marginal impact on this play, but I think it is something to consider. Even apart from all the other things that we mentioned at the top, right? So yeah, I think this is another kind of slam dunk call. Even though a lot of coaches might think otherwise in many of these types of situations.
Yeah, and this is one of those where with that Washington football team defense that's so good, you hear people say trust your defense, get the field goal, trust your defense not to give up a touchdown. The way I've always kind of looked at it is, why not go for it if you trust your defense? It would, as a defensive player, I think would make me feel better and more confident, and my coach has confidence in me if they're willing to risk not the great field position. This wasn't terrible. They would still be at their own 36. The Chargers would be. But let your defense do what they do.
Yeah, it's silly, right? Because your defense is going back on the field regardless,
yeah.
Right? It has nothing to do with trust. It's about giving yourself the best chance to win. And, I feel like coaches in press conferences, it's easy to moralize the decision, make it about trust. It has nothing to do with trust. You're trying to win the game. And these NFL offenses are so good. They're only getting better. We saw it again week 1. There are teams that can absolutely light up the scoreboard. Deny them possession, right? Possession is so valuable in football. There's only so many per game. And make the most out of yours and deny your opponent, valuable possession, especially at the end of close games.
Yep. And that's exactly what Ron Rivera did there. So he went for it. Antonio Gibson got the ball and got 5 yards. And that's the other thing is that people kind of you forget is that you get overage yardage sometimes. At least you don't pick up just 1 yard every single time. Now, moving on to the top one, which we mentioned already, so we won't go too deep into this one, was the Bengals in overtime, 40 seconds left, 4th and 1 near midfield, went for it. Another one where they threw it, maybe caught Minnesota off guard. They sent a lot of people on that play, ended up getting 32 yards. That was 11.3% prior to the snap on that play. Anything you want to add on there? Because I know we covered that in the beginning, so there's not really a whole lot more to add.
No, I think that we pretty much touched on it. And obviously, as you were just mentioning about overage yardage, I mean, there's no better example than that play, right?
Yep, and it happened last night as well. It didn't make our top 5, but Baltimore had the 4th and 1 around the 35, maybe early in the game, and Tyson Williams took it to the house for a touchdown.
Right.
So that's always good to see, especially when they go for it on some of those questionable, where fans at least are questioning them. So that'll wrap up the best decisions of the week. Again, if you're interested in seeing more of these, are all available. The top 5 decisions are available at our website at EdjSports.com. Again, that's EdjSports.com. So now, Scott, we got the good decisions out of the way. Now it's kind of time to go to some more of to some of the criticism. We'll wrap up the week in review with a look at the top 5 worst decisions from the weekend's action. And again, these are going to be the decisions coaches made that had the most negative impact on the game in terms of win probability prior to the snap. And again, these are not personnel decisions, what specific play you called. It's 4th downs, critical calls, which are 4th downs, can sometimes be kickoffs, extra points, things like that. So starting off with number 5, we had the Chiefs and the Browns. So that started, the Chiefs were down 22-10, down 12 points late in the second quarter, coming up on halftime. The Chiefs were going to get the ball after halftime. 4th and 10 at the Cleveland 45. So this is one we have in our meetings when we're kind of reviewing everything that we can definitely defend it, and you're about to do that coming up here in a second. But that cost the Chiefs 3.7% win probability before the snap late in the second quarter. First half still. What's going on with that one? How can you defend that one?
Turn me loose, Ian. I mean, we're gonna catch some heat for this one. I'm gonna make the case though. So you are the Kansas City Chiefs. Your offense is probably the best we've ever seen in professional football. And there are a couple other components. So ignore the 10 yards to go for a second. You are the Kansas City Chiefs offense, so pretty much you can call whatever play you want, and as long as it's going to go far enough, like there's really no question that that they're capable, right, of picking up the 10 yards given a right play call. But let's just consider some of the other circumstances of this decision, right? So they're at the Cleveland 45. We talked about this a moment ago. This is really the sweet spot in the part of the field where going for it pays off the most. You could punt. And maybe turn field position over by 20, 25 yards. Not that great, really not that great. I think the quick rebuttal here is playing results and saying, well, they downed it, at the Cleveland 1, so there you go, you're wrong. That's not a very common occurrence. Sure, it worked out here, but when you're at this part of the field, like none of your options are that great, right? You're just out of field goal range. The point is, punting the ball oftentimes ends up with a fair catch or even a touchback, and gives the other team the ball, right, like just 20 yards from where you had it. So really not that valuable there to swing field position. The next thing is the clock. So there's 1 minute and 45 seconds left on this clock, which is horrible for you, right? Because you're giving the other team the ball, a very capable, good offensive team in the Cleveland Browns. You're giving them the ball with just the right amount of time to go down the field and score on you and then not get it back.
And they still have both teams do, but the Browns still had 3 timeouts in this situation as well.
Right, so plenty of time to work, and yeah, you're really sort of in a bad spot there. Like the ideal circumstance is you hold on to the ball, you crowd out the other team from having any sort of valuable possession. Maybe you give it back to them with 10 seconds left or 20 seconds left or something like that, and you're able to capitalize on your possession. So there's a lot of value here to going for it, picking up the first down. And maybe it only leads to a field goal, but it's still hugely valuable to deny the Browns the opportunity to go kick a field goal of their own, most likely, or even worse than that, score a touchdown. So considering those circumstances, you really have a lot going for this decision. Now, folks, well, obviously the 10 yards to go part will definitely catch your eye, and many folks will never want to go for a 4th and 10 this early. But I think if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you have to consider it. Your offense is so good. You're already trailing 12 points here. Our model thinks it's just better by about 3.7% to go for it here. And yeah, I really think that I would be going for it here. I do think it's the right call.
And that Browns defense is improved, but I think we both, and obviously our model is giving greater strength to that Kansas City offense than that improved Browns defense. Which still isn't top level yet, but they're good. But that Chiefs offense, man, is just they're just too much. So moving on now to number 4, the 4th worst play of the week or decision of the week came from the Panthers against the Jets. So this one was interesting. The Panthers were leading 16-8 with 8:48 left in the 4th quarter. Had 4th and 2 at the Jets 6. They lined up like they were going to go for it, tried to draw them off sides, and looked like intentionally took a delay of game with attempting a field goal. Like we see that with punts a lot, but not a field goal. Either way, at 4th and 2, the decision to not go for it cost the Panthers 3.8% in win probability before the snap there. So I really, aside from penalty aside, the fact that they're pushing themselves back 5 yards, maybe the closer you are to the field goal, I guess sometimes people say it makes it harder. I'm not sure if that's true. I've kicked some field goals before. Back in my day, I don't think it's more difficult being closer. But either way, what do you make of this decision by Matt Rule?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Apart from like the particular play call they made, I mean, just go for it. It's 4th and 2. You're at the 6. Even if you fail, you're in a great spot. You're against the Jets offense that not that good. They had their struggles, and I think that it's easy to make the argument here. Once again, here, take the points. It maybe applies more because the field goal is such a chip shot,
and it's an 8-point lead, takes it to 11, so they would need a touchdown, 2-point conversion, and field goal to tie, but still. Sure,
I can definitely hear that argument. But man, 4th and 2, you got 4th and 2, and you have kind of the ball in the spot of the field where touchdowns are like if you can pick up a fresh set of downs, that's like touchdown becomes like very, very likely, right? Because you're 1st and goal, like knocking on the door, and once again, like we saw this happen, I think, in the Cleveland game. They went for kind of a very similar situation, and they scored a touchdown on the play. So you have touchdown equity on just the play that you're running, apart from the one or from the outcome of just trying to pick up a first down. So, yeah, 3.8% difference here, and yeah, I think it's the right call, even apart from the other factors of the decision that kind of would make a head coach want to lean towards kicking the field goal.
Yeah, and that Jets team as a whole has just been horrible the last couple of years, and they've got Robert Saleh as their head coach now. So the defense, he's a great defensive coordinator. It's still, for the most part, the same defense as it has been. You got a rookie at quarterback in Zach Wilson who looks pretty good, has a ton of potential. They did make it a game, but still, you got to go for it there. Like I said, inside the 6, only 2 yards to go. Moving on to number 3 of the week, it's the Chiefs again, which is a little surprising because Andy Reid is normally on top of it. He is, I think, top 3 in our coach rankings the last 3 years. They ended up winning the game, people might say, but this one, it was their first possession. They're down 8-0, 4th and 2 at the Cleveland 10, first quarter, 2 minutes left. Choose to kick a field goal. This is something one of our co-founders, Frank, and I were talking about yesterday. I know you know Frank very well as well. It seems that we love Andy Reid. Like I said, we think he is one of the best in terms of fourth down decision making. But it seems like early on, he kind of, on those first drives or two, if he's got a chance for a field goal, he'll get those points. I guess he knows that his team is dominant and they're going to keep going. But this one, oftentimes they do, but this one was a 4.3% error to kick that on 4th and 2 at the 10. I don't know if you really have much more to say on this. It's a little bit more straightforward than that one was at number 5. Really just has to do with their offense versus that Cleveland defense.
Yeah, we're beating them up a little bit this week. I mean, we do love Andy Reid. We think he mostly gets it right here. So that's why this game kind of seems like a bit of a head scratcher. I think 4th and 2 here with your offense, it's just a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk. So there's really not too much more to say on it, but I think we hope to see Andy Reid return to form here in the coming weeks.
And then number 2, we'll just kind of skip over this one real quick because you discussed it in depth. It was that Bengals punt on 4th and 3 at the Minnesota 47 there at the end of the fourth quarter. That one cost them, I think it was about 4.4%. So that really wasn't. There's really nothing more to add on that one that we haven't already covered. But looking now at the number 1, this is something that we mentioned a little bit in the beginning, going back to that Thursday game, gave the Cowboys a temporary lead, but the decision itself was not correct. Trailing 28-26, a minute 29 left, Tom Brady on the other side, 4th and 6 at the 30, chose to send Zerline out for the field goal. He did make this one and gave them the temporary lead, some temporary excitement there, but Tom Brady on the other side. So you want to talk about this one a little bit more than what we covered before?
Yeah. So 4th and 6, Tampa Bay 30. They wound up kicking the field goal, 48-yard field goal. Zerline converted it, which was great. Seems great in the moment, right? That hey, we take the lead. Everything's great. Like the game's almost over, and we did what we needed to do. But you're not so much, right? You're giving the ball back to Tom Brady, one of the best to ever do it, with a minute and a half left, plenty of time to work. All they need is a field goal to overtake the Cowboys. And in this case, he did it. So I do think that it was the wrong decision. But it was the wrong decision even before that outcome, right? So you really have to think long and hard about denying the other team possession here. So picking up this first down, you can basically completely bleed the clock out and kick a game-winning field goal, and that's really the difference, right? So that's why we think this decision was not the right one. Once again, I know that can be hard for some people to wrap their minds around. You got to take the lead. But these I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. These teams are so good. Like these offenses are so good this day and age. And we saw it on display Thursday night when Tampa Bay just kind of went right down the field and won the game.
And that's similar to a decision we had last year that was in, I think it was number 3 or 4 maybe of the entire season with Shanahan in San Francisco. A little bit different because I think they had a 4th and 1 inside the 30 of the Rams, but they went for it. They got it. The Rams had no timeouts. They bled the last minute down, whatever it was, and kicked a field goal, and the Rams never got a chance to answer. So that's kind of like you said, that's the gist of it. Just you don't want to give the other team even the opportunity to beat you. You want to win it.
Yeah, because you're not gonna have the same thing work back in your favor, right? Like with a minute and 30 left, you're very unlikely to get the ball back in the event that they take the lead. So.
Yep. Awesome. That's been some great insight. Hope you guys have really enjoyed this. We want to be able to put context to these decisions. We can put the numbers out there as much as we want, and like you've seen, there are some that may look a little questionable, like the 4th and 10 in midfield, even in your own territory. But there's always an explanation behind it, so we want to make sure to let you in on that, so that you can kind of understand the context and kind of start to think about these different ways, instead of just always thinking, oh, you only have 3 downs to get a first down or to get a touchdown. There's always a 4th down. So that wraps up our worst decisions of the week. Again, if you're interested in seeing more with those plays, be sure to check out our top 5 section on EdjSports.com, and also read our weekly Risky Business column by Frank Frigo, our co-founder who I mentioned a moment ago, who this week highlighted Mike McCarthy's decisions in that Dallas-Tampa Bay game in the opener on Thursday night. So that'll wrap up our Week 1 show. Be sure to check out all of our analysis from Week 1 on EdjSports.com. No, we're hammering you guys with that. We just want you to remember Edge Sports, EdjSports. And don't forget to download that app to get your betting preview for every game of every week for the rest of the season. So if you watched our betting preview videos last week as well, before the Thursday night game, we picked the Bengals and Steelers as 2 of our featured picks. The money line there was some value there of 2 of the underdogs to pick. They actually ended up winning. Could have won you a little bit of money there if you listened in. We also had Miami, Houston to cover the spread. So we did really well last week. For those that we featured, the one, I guess, actual featured matchup we had with Washington fell short a little bit. We really thought that they were the better team there. Actually had them as favorites going into that game. But stay with us and come back every week. We'll give you some betting preview for Monday Night Football in this show as well. Since we're doing this on a Tuesday, we don't have that preview, obviously, because the game happened last night. So, Scott, thank you for joining me. Enjoy the rest of the season, and check back in with us next week where Scott and I will be running through Week 2's games.